Good evening, and welcome to the September 17th, 2014 Town Board meeting. I'll officially call the meeting to order. I'd ask that you please rise for the pledge, and I'd ask that you please remain standing after the pledge for a moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would just ask that we keep George Shaw. George Shaw passed away over the weekend. George was involved in this community in many ways, zoning board, planning board, most recently Historic Preservation Board. He served this community well and was a very distinguished member of this community. And I would ask that at this time we keep George in our thoughts and prayers. Also, we just learned just a very short time ago that Amy's grandmother passed away. And so Amy is off to where she should be, and that is with family. Mr. Costello will pinch hit for us, and we appreciate that. But this evening, I would ask that Mrs. Rosenbaum and George Shaw be kept in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you. I would ask Mr. Costello if he would please call the roll.
Call for roll. LaFountain.
Present.
Metzler.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Great.
A little bit out of order, but we got there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our first order of business this evening is a public hearing, and I would ask that we read that legal to start that public hearing, please.
Yes, to allow a 9,120 square foot office building at 2154 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road.
Thank you. And Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. I would ask that the applicant or applicants please address the board on this particular matter. We did receive, and everyone has copies of the material that you submitted on behalf of this particular application. So we have all of those details. However, I'd ask, as part of the site plan process, if you would go through the normal process of reporting out things like the parking, the drainage, any of the utility connections that you have, and then talk about the actual site itself, what's being proposed, so we have all of that detail in the records.
Certainly.
Mr. Schaff, you've got the floor.
Good evening. My name is Eric Schaff. I'm with Marathon Engineering. I'm representing DHD Ventures. With me here tonight is Tom Masacci of DHD Ventures, also Trevor Harrison, who is the architect, HBT architect. We are talking tonight about a professional office building that will be located in the Doodlebugs, or the Jeremiah's Plaza, as we like to now call it. Fair disclosure, Tom is involved in Jeremiah's, as was my firm, so we're renaming it Jeremiah. No, I'm just teasing. Anyways, our site is a 1.4 acre portion of the plaza. The plaza, as you may well know, is located on the east side of Route 250, south of 441, opposite the traffic light into the Target Plaza. We are actually the parcel directly north of the Doodlebugs building, quote unquote, in the rear of that plaza area. And we are east of the recently approved Panera Bread site, which is now beginning construction. This multiple parcel area was the subject of an incentive zoning resolution passed by the town board back in July of 2006. Thus, the town board is the authorizing agency in the board for this project. We're proposing the construction of a 9,120 plus or minus square foot single-story building, which will be used as a professional office building, which is a permitted use in this portion of the plaza. That subject zoning is BN-R, business non-retail, so that does apply there, along with modifications made by the board back in 2006. In general, Trevor will be talking about the building in detail and showing a nice, pretty picture, but let me just say it's aesthetically pleasing, and it complies, we believe, very well with the look required by the incentive zoning resolution, that being residential in character. There will be landscaping around that building to complement the facility. The lighting, we are sensitive to the visual impacts. There will be building-mounted light packs, but the parking lot lights will be shoebox fixtures, and we will attempt to avoid and control light spillage as best we can. We will be matching those lights, if you will, to the lights in use for Jeremiah's and for Panera. There is an access drive to the north of the building, connecting onward, if you will, into whatever future projects may be there to the north of our project. At this point, we are anticipating 3 tenants, equally split among the building, healthcare providers, licensed professionals, CPAs, engineers, the uses that are allowed by the zoning. There is a 75-foot setback that applies to this parcel, and we will also be constructing parking for this project. In addition, parking is shared amongst all the tenants within that incentive zoning parcel, which is basically the plaza, to wit, Panera, Jeremiah's, Doodlebugs, and anything that may be developed in the last remaining portion of this incentive zoning area, which is the parcel directly south of Jeremiah's, fronting on Route 250. One thing that we did in our design, the parking space size is a 9 by 18, which is a common size versus the standard, if you will, or the town requirement of 9 foot by 20. The Panera Bread, as you may recall, was recently approved with 9 by 18 parking. We have made some revisions to the plan. We've met with town staff and had some additional meetings with our client. So I'd like to just highlight those that we have not yet submitted plans. We'll take your feedback here, and then we'll submit a revised set of plans. I don't think there's anything overly substantial, if you will, that we can't talk about and discuss tonight. We widened the sidewalk that runs along the building, abutting the parking areas, to 7 feet. We had proposed a little less because we're tight on space, if you will, in the east to west, but we did widen that to 7 feet. The way we did that is we narrowed the drive aisle to 23 feet. Now, town code, we recognize, is 24 feet. We believe 23 feet works. We have done an auto turn analysis and confirmed for the fire marshal that the 105-foot ladder truck that Penfield purchased just a few years ago, manufactured by Pierce, can access the site. The space from the sidewalk to the building protrusion, if you will, it is not a straight edge building, that's part of the reason it looks good, is 4 feet, and then the depth of what I call the building inserts is 2 feet. What that means is the grass median along the drive aisle to the west has been widened to about 4.7. You know, in an ideal world, it might go another 3 inches to 5 feet. And in an ideal world, we would have a full 5-foot grass median and a 24-foot drive aisle. Call it 20 inches, maybe 24. So ideally, a 73-foot setback as opposed to the 75. Now, the 73 is 2 feet less, I mean, but it's 2 out of 75. We are already committed to working to the town's requirement. On this plan, we simply showed a few trees. We've been asked to, and we have agreed that we will work with the town's landscaping consultant, Bruce Zaretsky, and anybody else from the neighborhood, Jim Costello, representing those folks, et cetera, to exactly define what trees should be placed where and that type of thing. So we are going to be landscaping the rear of the building, which I believe would be a full mitigation for that change from 75 to 73. The other alternative that isn't as attractive would be to shrink that space from the side between the sidewalk and the building protrusion from 4 feet down to 2.5 feet. That makes it a little harder to landscape, more importantly, harder to maintain that landscaping just because you're only down to 2.5 feet. But that would be the other way if we were if it was suggested by the town to go back to the 24 and make sure we had a minimum of 5-foot median. Or we can go with what we have. There's some options. Again, I think we can talk those things out and come to a resolution. I don't see it as a overly large hurdle to overcome in our final discussions with the town. I don't want to say negotiation, discussions as we reach these resolutions. The other thing we did was we added 2 parking spaces on the south side of the building. They said we could extend the parking area there a little bit, so we have. So it extends just slightly to the east, so that the last parking space is closer to the edge of the building. We do need that little jut out in order for cars to safely back out of those parking spaces there at the end. The town asked us to look at lower light fixtures. We will look at that, but we've got to make sure there is enough lighting for safety and security of the patrons of the building. If you lower the light fixtures too much, sometimes you end up needing an extra light pole. So that's an undesirable, perhaps, trade-off. But it's something, again, we'll look at, run some lighting contours, and have that discussion and come to a mutually agreeable decision. We'll also look at reorienting, perhaps shifting the location of one of those lights. Again, the 2 lights at the northern edge are pretty well blocked by the building. It's just the 2 at the little bit of our southern edge of our parcel. So again, we'll concentrate on those and run some contours and see what we can do. One of the other comments was we were asked to, I'm going to put this in quotes, play nice with the property to the north and coordinate with them. And of course we will, in terms of our design for utility stubs and connections. We need certain slopes on ours. I'm sure they do as well, but we will make sure that things line up. All I would ask is that we get some design plans and some contact information. I wasn't aware of that detail, but we'll get that working with Jim or whoever, Mark Valentine, and we'd be happy to coordinate. We would do that. And that's the way it was done for the other ones, even in the absence. If there wasn't an approved project, you put utilities going there. In terms of storm drainage, again, this was part of a plaza, if you will. The storm drainage was designed back in the Doodlebugs era, if you will, for the entire plaza based on concept and build-outs. Although our building, I think, was projected to be around the 9,000 square foot area, and it's now 9,120. The other buildings and projects that have been approved, Jeremiah's and the Panera, are less impactful. So overall, again, we're confident that the stormwater drainage that was originally designed, the overall plaza, it still works with that. So we are just connecting into that established area. The services for gas and electric, we have specified where they're coming from, but that is really up to RG&E, and we have submitted plans to them, and we will hear back from them. Because there is Panera, because there is Doodlebugs, because there is Jeremiah's, it is not an issue of running utilities to the site in terms of water, gas, and electric, and we will simply coordinate with those agencies, and plans have been submitted to them, and we've not yet received any responses in terms of where they ideally would like connections to be made. I believe I've covered all the high points. If I missed one, I'm certainly willing to answer any questions, but at this point, I'll ask Trevor to further describe. All I can say as an engineer, the nice-looking building. He's going to say a lot better words about his building.
But before you go, can you elaborate on the drainage? You said you're looking to conform with the originally approved design from 2006. Can you just walk through just briefly what that means?
Sure.
What's the plan for drainage?
Back in 2006, the stormwater management facility was designed taking into account a certain area of impervious area and how that much water in terms of volume, if you will, and how it had to be treated in terms of water quality. So that would overall pond, if you will, which is the common vernacular stormwater management facility, was designed to accommodate a certain amount of input and to treat that water in accordance with the requirements of the Department of Environmental Conservation. Well, we have confirmed that the overall amount of impervious area and therefore the amount of water going into that facility is less than what was originally designed for. Therefore, that facility still functions as designed and as intended, so no modifications are required. We will be collecting the stormwater and directing it to that stormwater management facility.
And Mr. Schaff, as part of that question, I think the next logical piece would be to make some comments about the EAF form that you submitted, which is part of the package. I think it would be good to just have a few words in and around that form and that process that you used for the
Sure.
for the application.
I can grab I have it with me and go over it, but basically it is a requirement of the approval process for us to fill out the short environmental assessment form, which describes the project and also is now automatically linked through a number of databases so that it pulls up and identifies if there are any SHPO concerns, State Historical Preservation Office, any wetlands in the area, the floodplain and that type of thing. And also we have to go through and answer and address issues such as traffic. Again, this use comports and conforms with the traffic that was originally envisioned for the area. As everyone realizes, Route 250 is an extremely busy area connecting to Route 441, which is an extremely busy road. So we made this statement, and not only does it conform and comport to the originally envisioned use, but that the medical office building, professional office building that we're envisioning and planning will not have a significant impact on the traffic that already exists, which is pretty easy to intuit and then makes common sense, unlike some government forms. In addition, that EAF requires us to answer such questions as the level of noise during construction and post-construction and other issues to make sure that the impact, and that's why it's called the environmental assessment form, does not have a negative impact. No negative impact were identified through the completion of this form, and as part of the seeker process, the board will discuss that and make their findings. But we've given information on a number of different elements to allow that to happen. The only other thing I didn't mention is the fire hydrant situation and fire protection. That has been designed for the entire plaza as part of Jeremiah's. Some additional hydrants. There was a fire district formed, and the fire marshal is comfortable in our discussions with him with the fire protection. And again, that's why we ran the analysis to ensure that the largest truck can access the site.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my name is Trevor Harrison, partner at HPT Architects. You have in your packet a rendering of the building and elevations, straight-on elevations as well. And I'm just going to speak to those a little bit. Thank you, Rick. We've got those as larger images as well for people to take a look at. I will be brief in the description, but in general, at roughly 9,100 square feet. This is not a overly large building, but it was the desire of the owner and of us as the design team to break the building down a little bit, to give it a little bit of character and motion, I guess we'll call it, across the elevation. And in order to do that, we did step the building in and out, as Eric mentioned, a little bit across the front or the west elevation, as well as along the sides. And this helps us change materials and break the overall massing down of the building a little bit. We're looking at a building of about 21 feet, roughly, to the top of the main roof, and about 26 or so feet to the top of the cupola. Those are rough numbers. We haven't, worked out exactly that section yet, pending design comments, but those are the general numbers. In terms of materials, as you can see from the rendering, we're looking at a brick, probably some sort of red brick, has not been selected yet. And what we did on the elevation for that was kind of move it up and down. It's consistent across the base, but it does move up and down along the elevation, again, to help break the building down, the building massing a little bit. It's complemented by a cast stone product, which is a manufactured stone product. That's the lighter material, as you see there. The roof would be asphalt shingles, except for the curved roof areas, shown in the rendering, and those are a standing seam metal roof, bronze in color at this point. We weren't planning on anything much more color-wise. Eric mentioned the lighting. We would do lighting at the entryways per code. It's not anticipated that there's a lot of building lighting on this, but it's more wall pack per code. And I neglected to mention the windows, aluminum windows, again, of a dark anodized frame material, probably clear glass. We haven't necessarily selected the glass yet. So that's a quick general overview of the building, and I can take any questions that you might have.
Can you talk a little bit about what's not seen, the east side, the back side?
Sure. We did not render the backside in this image, but it is in your packets in the elevation. Given the nature of this building facing the west, and that being the main front of the building, and trying to give identity for each of the planned tenants ultimately, it is broken up more on the west side than on the east side. Again, we kept the materials similar, putting brick on the back so that it is a substantial building, not necessarily trying to cheapen or lessen the quality of the backside. But we did also break that down a little bit to address the neighbors to the east. Again, the cast stone happens back there as well. And, again, we're considering the landscape buffer through there. I should also mention that there are exits out the back of that, and that's going to be a code requirement. So there is a walk back there to access those.
And that'll be used emergency lighting only?
Absolutely, yes.
So will those doors be alarmed so that folks aren't sneaking out to have smokes in the back?
I would imagine so, yeah. I can certainly see that happening. We haven't done the individual tenant fit-ups, but I can see that that's...
Okay. All right. Certainly recognize that you need to have per fire code to have the exits, but certainly want to make sure that it's not, being used, inappropriately, let's say. So, okay. Board, for the architect, any questions or additional questions at this time?
No, I think he's done a good job with architecture.
Thank you, appreciate that.
We were looking for something a little different, not to have the same old look, and you've broken it down nicely, I think. And I appreciate what you've done in the back, because that, you want the neighbors, you don't want the neighbors to see a lot, because that's what the buffering's for, but, what they do see, have it look a little classier than just a brick wall.
Thank
so.
you. I think that's always a balance. How
Yes.
much do you put
Right.
back there? So.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Okay, let's open it up then, probably more from the engineering side. Eric, you talked about, the landscaping in the back. I know that you've had some discussions with PRC or representatives of PRC, and you've talked about doing some landscaping back there, and I think Mr. Soretsky is also going to be taking a look at that. But at least according to the plan, there are a number of additional plantings that are going in there, and the question would be to match that, not only with the properties to the north that this board recently heard, but then also tied in to doodlebugs as well, so that you have that kind of that consistent theme or consistent look, so that as the neighbors are looking up that whole area, that it all kind of blends together. So any additional comments regarding your landscaping at this point? Again, I know you probably have not had conversations with Zaretsky at this point.
Not about this project.
Okay.
In disclosure, we're working with them on another project. But, so no, Bruce and I have not touched base, but we are more than willing to coordinate that. Again, our landscape architect came out, took a look at the Doodlebugs project, and then we did this. Part of it also was we're waiting to more closely coordinate with Trevor in terms of whatever may be going on in the back. There may very well be, similar to Doodlebugs, the HVAC pads, and we want to make sure that we screen those appropriately and that type of thing. So Tom has committed to doing the landscaping, and in terms of the details, we've got to work that out. I didn't want to lock us into anything and then not be able to make the adjustments that the town and/or as coordination with the architect.
Yeah, Eric, I will offer up the comments I made consistently with the potential project to the north regarding landscaping and buffering. I think the comment was made by that design team that they were looking to be consistent or have a similar buffer to doodlebugs, and my comment at the time was that's not enough. Historically speaking, we've, I think, learned that more is better and that there needs to be an additional buffer for that residential neighborhood. So I will request the same thing that I did of that potential applicant was to, work with Zareski and not just use doodlebugs as a template for your buffering.
And that's fine. I believe we'd called out some of the evergreens. Here it was, we designated working with the Town of Penfield horticultural consultant, but we started off with some green spruce, some Norway spruce, and evergreen, basically just to, again, provide the year-round screening.
Certainly.
In terms of the property to the north, it was a mixture of coniferous and some deciduous. But if you'd like us, again, to coordinate those species, our landscape person can work with whoever the landscape person, and maybe even then get Bruce and just have the three of them sit down, and perhaps we can get a table at Jeremiah's, nice and close to a site walk, and then meet over lunch, and we'll be able to hammer this thing out.
Yeah, it's really to maximize that buffering opportunity, not so
Right.
much certainly the type of trees I would defer to Bruce on, but, again, maximizing the space.
Right, and I believe when I walked the
purpose.
site, Doodlebugs had done a relatively nice job in terms of that wasn't just a single line of trees. There was a double row, and they were staggered so that, again, from a distance, it provides a solid, relatively solid screening. And, that's the intent that we would do as well. Again, in coordination with Bruce so that he's happy and everybody. But I think the intent is to provide the buffering. And, Tom, if you need Tom, I'll have him up here and he can stand here and say it into the record. But our intent is to provide, a substantial buffer.
And to follow up on Paula's comments, is it anticipated to remove any of the current vegetation behind this property?
When you say behind, I've got to, go into my
To the
engineering mode and say, where the building edge is, there will be a sidewalk, there will be some HVAC pads. Due to the slopes in the area, we'll have to put in a little bit of retaining wall and make sure that we're able to level that ground out. In order to do that construction, there may be some tree removal just because, if it's in the way, it's got to go because we need to do that. However, other than that, no, and then we will be planting trees in and around, like I said, a buffer area around those HVACs to screen and some others. So, no, we're not looking to take out trees that don't need to be taken out.
Okay.
However, when you're in construction, if you're disturbing a tree root and the tree's going to die and topple, you may have to take it out.
And I understand that, but again, as you coordinate with the property to the north, I believe that was one of the comments that was brought up at their hearing, so just something to keep in mind.
Right, and I don't anticipate that, directly north of us, that's where we're planting some. I don't think we'd have to be overly disturbing that area. Again, the sidewalk only has to go to the furthest door and a little beyond, for aesthetics, if you will. But it does not go all the way up to the north, nor does it wrap around back to the west on that northern side of the building. There's no intent to have it circumnavigate, if you will, the entire building.
Would you just make a couple of comments, some additional comments, if you will, on the traffic component? I believe that the traffic study was done by Perone, 2006, if I recall. Let me grab my sheet right here. I think it was January of 2006, and then they revised it in May of 2006. And I know that you have been in contact with the state DOT as part of this, and what initial feedback have they provided on this project?
For this particular project, we have not yet contacted DOT. There is
Okay.
no direct access. We're onto the state road. We're accessing this particular parcel through the existing curb cut, on Route 250. The medical office building of 9,000 square feet, in and of itself, I'd have to dig and see if I have the exact traffic counts, but that will not be a large number of traffic, especially when it's considered as a component of the existing traffic and a percentage. You've got numerous businesses north-south along Route 250 located within the Target Wegmans Plaza. In addition, even within our particular plaza, we have Jeremiah's and Panera. There's the McDonald's immediately, a little further north. And so there are a lot of destination facilities that will be generating traffic. The medical office building will generate what we deem to be a non-significant increase in relation to that large base of existing traffic. If the board would like, I can follow up with a letter with some particular numbers, but it's
I think in your
relatively
report, I think in your
self-evident.
report here, you indicate that there will generate, this facility will generate 342 trip ends. I'm on page 7 of 7.
Okay, you have a better memory and able to flip pages better. Then that is the number.
Okay. And so while DOT went through for this whole project, so this whole project, if I think of the property south of Jeremiah's, Doodlebugs, now this project, Panera, and then the office building behind that, State DOT has weighed in, I think, at what I would call kind of a high level when the light was put in and when the initial drive was put in, but they haven't had a need, or we haven't asked them for any additional comments or feedback. So I'll ask that question to both you and Mr. Costello.
Allow me to answer that question first. The DOT required several things of the original applicants, most notably the installation of a traffic signal at that intersection. The DOT, excuse me, the DOT's main concern is to ensure the traffic along the right-of-way is maintained properly. Their intent is to keep the traffic on the subject properties so that they're dispersed onto the main thoroughfare in an orderly fashion. I'm not certain the DOT will care how many cars are actually placed on this site, as long as they're not interfering with the use of the right-of-way. In essence, you could queue cars up on the property as far as you wanted to, which obviously becomes a concern for the property owners. But for the DOT's concern, it's not an issue as long as they maintain that traffic light.
So
That's where we are now. So-
potential concerns were satisfied by the implementation of the traffic
And
light.
exactly, and the fact that there's no improvements for this particular project for additional right-of-way use or anything of that nature, curb cuts, there is no need to apply for permits. The DOT did review the project through the 239M review process, and we received no data back from them. The case with Dr. Falone, who's immediately north of them, Dr. Falone will be altering an existing curb cut for the Reese property. He will have to go to the DOT, and he will have to generate a traffic report for that project.
Okay, thank you. Board, other questions or comments at this time before we open it up?
Where's the HVAC pad on the drawing? Is it, what side of the building?
East side.
Inside. It's going to be enclosed. but-
They are located more or less near the doors that we have shown along the back. Again, for lack of definition, as Trevor develops his final floor plan, those locations may shift a little bit, but typically located near that exit door off the edge of the sidewalk is where you put your HVAC equipment. And then similar to Doodlebugs, we will throw plants, trees, and other appropriate screening around each of those. I anticipate there would be 3. One, because we're demising the space into 3 tenant spaces, so each would have their own.
So for the record, when you say to the back, to the east?
To the east, located on the eastern side of the emergency sidewalk, if you will, roughly near each of the exit doors. There will be 3 along there, 1 for each of the proposed tenant spaces.
Okay. Other comments?
The dumpster, is this the dumpster up here, this little building in the corner?
Yes, in the northwest corner, it's an angled dumpster, if you will. There will be an enclosure. We leave it to Trevor to specify the exact material. My guess is it won't be exactly the building material, but it'll be something that will be complementary with an E, as in it will fit and match the look and be of similar material.
And it'd be just for those 3 tenants in that building as opposed to?
Yes,
any of
no,
those
it'll be
additional-
located on our property line. There is no intent to share the dumpster. We share parking amongst the tenants of the plaza, but no intent to share the dumpster.
Thank you.
And that was a relocated up to to that location based
Away
upon
from-
our initial concept presentation to the board, and that was a good idea, and we took that and were able to make that work.
Very good.
Okay, other comments, board, at this point? Okay, is there anyone that signed up to speak for this particular application?
I don't believe so. I have 3,
Okay.
oh, I'm sorry, she is not signed up, but Karen Wilson.
Okay, so not a problem. Welcome, Karen. Thank you. We'll keep the record straight. Thanks, Karen.
Get this out of your way.
Sorry I'm late for this party. I do have a couple questions.
Could you please give your name and address?
Karen Wilson, 52 Braunston. And the questions are mostly based around this one. Is this the back, is this level with the back of Doodlebugs, or does Doodlebugs end up here?
So
I could
I would
confirm.
just ask that we speak into the mic so that, because we capture this and we want to make sure that we capture it for the record.
And I'll just ask the board, would you like me to respond to the
Please,
board?
please.
As we go through, or
No,
wait till the end?
let's,
One at
while
a
we,
time?
I don't see the people out the door and down the roadway, so let's make this as efficient as we can.
That'd be fine. Doodlebugs was subject to a 75-foot setback, the same as we are. So I will check, but I do believe that the building would be aligned pretty much. Again, it's a setback from the overall parcel line, and I just need to confirm, Doodlebugs was a long time ago, and I wasn't involved with it, that it was, the parcel line was the same. But we're each subject to a 75-foot from the back of the property line.
Right. I think that Doodlebugs was, gave more than 75 feet, though, if I remember.
No, they were
correct. They were
75,
75 feet?
yeah.
Their building is 75 feet. And is this the 75 feet that you were going to diminish to 73 feet or 72 feet? Is that what you were talking
I'm
about earlier?
asking, yes, I was asking if we could shrink rather than 75 to 73 and still maintain all of the screening and the landscaping.
Okay. And then this is a sidewalk?
Yes.
All right. Doodlebugs, and it might be because they're different uses, does not have a back door per se. They don't have any back door. So, then there is no sidewalk back there.
Sure, I thought you did. There is I respectfully disagree. When I walked the
Okay.
site, that there was a back door, and my understanding is by code that they would have to have at least an emergency egress.
They're on the ends. Their exits are on the ends here too. I don't recall. Luckily, those trees are getting nice and big now. And I don't recall specifically, but I know
Whether
they.
whether they're on the north and the south versus on the east,
Yes.
is what you're saying.
Yes. And if that's possible with this, and can eliminate the sidewalk, because I think especially by adding this parking in between the two buildings, you're inviting people to walk back there. And if this is just an emergency sidewalk, unless it's, necessitated by code, because I live right here, would appreciate there not being a sidewalk there, so you wouldn't have people congregating for smoke breaks and that kind of stuff. And if you don't have to have those egresses right there and can have them on the ends, that would be great. So I just want to put that out there, because I'm pretty sure there isn't one on Doodlebugs on the back side. It's on the end corner. Could be wrong, though. Always, it's happened before. What time is your garbage going to get picked up at? Because Doodlebugs, I believe, is picked up at 4 in the morning on Monday mornings. And I'm hoping that yours will not be done like that.
Can you verify that for us? Because there have been some neighbors in the neighborhood who have been concerned about that, but we haven't been able to identify the location.
Yeah, I'll listen for it again. Just,
Still
I mean,
let me
with the, you can hear it when, you know, I mean, because it makes a lot of noise when they
We need to
when they
verify
do
that that's the site, because we've been
Okay.
looking for various locations. in
That's
that
the,
neighborhood.
okay. I hear that.
Because
I think it's that.
what we have said is that 7 o'clock, we have it at least in a number of our different resolutions, we've talked about 7 o'clock. And something about 3 or 4 weeks before Jeremiah's opened up, we received a call that of some garbage pickup at 4:30 in the morning. And I
Yeah.
know Mr. Costello has been making the circuit, with the Wegmans and Target folks, the McDonald's folks, over into the Penn Fair Plaza folks, trying to identify, where that is.
Well, it's been consistent. There's no doubt about it. And it started long before Jeremiah's
Okay, yes.
got there. It's
I mean,
not Jeremiah's making the noise.
But we'd only heard it maybe a few weeks before Jeremiah's opened up,
Okay.
was when we got the report,
All
Karen.
right.
That's
So
helpful.
that's one thing. And you won't have outside speakers on here, like Doodlebugs has outside speakers? And you won't have any on there?
There's no need, there's no intent.
Awesome. And then your fans, which I'm guessing is the HVAC pad thing that you were talking about, that will be located at each door? So they have 3 different ones? Will there be anything on the roof, like fans, like there is on the back of Doodlebug? There's huge fans that are on the back of that?
Again, Trevor Harrison. I would not anticipate, given the professional office use of this, that we have exhaust fans and things like that. There may be small exhaust fans for a bathroom or something, but not something
Okay.
that generates noise. As for the HVAC units, what we're talking about is probably a condenser, similar to what you would have on a house for the air conditioning.
Right.
So it's that level of noise. And again, depending on ultimate tenant layout and things like that, we are talking about 3 of those.
Okay.
And again, they would be placed, again, why there's 3 exits is potentially 3 tenants, and they each need a way out, which makes the end load difficult because for this folks in the center.
Right.
But you would have 1, 2, 3 of those.
Okay.
And Trevor, can you just describe approximately how big are those condenser units?
Well, they haven't been sized necessarily, so I hesitate a little bit on that. But generally those things are somewhere about 3 by 3, 3.5 by 3, something
So we're
like
not
that.
talking about it.
We're not talking about a big. No, this is not again at 9,100 square feet. There are houses bigger than that, so we're not talking about a very complex system here
And it's
with
3
cooling
systems that are
towers or
making
anything
up
like that.
the 9,100 square foot.
Pardon?
3 independent systems that are
Absolutely, that's
essentially.
yes, absolutely.
Okay. Doodlebugs has theirs, and they have like a wooden base built around them, and then extra small pine trees planted around them individually too, and that seems to help with the noise in those as well. You certainly can't hear them over the kids when the kids are outside, that's for sure. What time do you expect length of construction to be? Once you get the go-ahead to go, is it going to be?
I don't necessarily know that.
Trevor, I just ask you to
Oh,
speak in the
I'm sorry, I
microphone?
apologize.
Thank you.
I have a booming voice, but not
Yeah,
that
no,
good.
no, I understand.
At this point, we haven't determined that. Some of that will depend on when we start construction. Obviously, if we start in the winter time, things are a little bit slower and that sort of thing. So I guess I hesitate to guess. I would say somewhere between 6 and 9 months, but that's a guess.
Okay. Also, I would prefer, and of course this is just me, that this parking not be here, because I don't like the way it invites people back into here. So if that can be eliminated, I would appreciate that. I would appreciate any extra space we can get here and not losing space here, lose it up here. That's my input on that. Don't take it away from the residents that are already there. And if you can work around the existing trees that are there, move whatever you're going to put there a couple inches or a couple feet to accommodate the existing established trees, that would be appreciated as well. When you work with the town and the horticultural people about the trees, size matters. Those big trees that went into doodlebugs are really doing well. And I think that if they had been any smaller when they went in, it wouldn't have filled in so nicely and so quickly to mitigate that site for the people that live behind there. And I think that's it. That's all the questions that I have. And I hope that as I look at the drawing renderings, that we can do something and maybe just have one back door is a point of egress and put the other two on the ends. Instead of putting things to the east, put them to the front or the sides. And I know that you guys can make them look nice too and suitable for the people that are coming there, because they're in and out and we're not. We live there. So that's just what I would appreciate your consideration on that.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this matter? This is 2154 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. Okay. Then I would ask our clerk tonight, who's wearing two hats. Again, thank you, Mr. Costello, for that. Is there any additional input from a staff standpoint that you believe should be put on the record that has not already been put on the record?
The only issue I have, Mr. LaFountain, is the fact that the PRC did review the application and was concerned for safety purposes that the median area going into the driving lanes was not adequate, and I think he's trying to accomplish that or address that concern by pulling the building back 2 feet. The board has to determine whether or not that's appropriate, but certainly if it is appropriate, we would be looking for additional landscaping to offset any concerns by the neighbors. And I know Mr. Young can't be here this evening, but I have spoken to him this week, and I have assured him that we will work to that end with him. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, board, any additional questions or comments for the applicant?
The only question I have, because there's no internal layout, but just by listening to this conversation, it appears that there's going to be 3 separate storefront entries. So there's no internal hallway that you can go from one end of the building to the other. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The building has not been leased at this point, and so, but it's always been planned for 3 separate entries. There could be 2 if it leases out properly.
Okay.
Just
But
'cause
no
that
internal.
may fuel the backdoor necessity from a
Right.
fire code
Potentially.
perspective as to ingress and egress.
Because
Yes,
originally I was envisioning something more that's up the street towards Willow Pond, which is you walk in one entry and then you can access the various offices from that the hallway where the elevator is. So I wanted to clarify that
Yes.
there are 3 separate storefronts per se into the building.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
A max of. So better said, there's a max of 3, but it could be 2.
Yes. I think the plan is for 3, that these would lease out as roughly 3,000, 3,400 square foot spaces.
But if someone came along and wanted more space or double the space, they certainly could do that. So
I'm sure if the owner could-
At the very least, you might see 2, but it's going to be between 2 or 3 tenants.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Board, other questions or comments for the applicant? And then for the applicant, anything additional that you'd like to add to the record that hasn't already been put on the record that you believe is pertinent to this particular application?
No, I'll just reiterate our willingness to work with town staff to address any of the other comments that the PRC had, and our willingness to work with Mr. Zaretsky to develop landscaping that will be satisfying to both the town and we hope to the neighbors. And we think this is a nice project and a good addition that rounds out this plaza. And we're happy to have been a part of most of that plaza's development. We look forward to finalizing this, and I would just respectfully ask that we move forward as expeditiously as we can through this process, because I know Mr. Masacci is anxious to begin construction so that we can then occupy the building and provide services to the community.
Okay, thank you. So next steps in this particular application, after this meeting, the next time that this board will take this matter up will be October 8th. That will be our next meeting. There is not a work session meeting on the 24th of this month due to holiday, Jewish holiday. So the board will next meet on October 8th. We'll meet here in the back of the room, 7 p.m., and certainly keep an eye on the agenda, stay in touch with Mr. Costello, and that's where we'll next have any questions or dialogue in and around this particular application. Okay. Seeing nothing further on this particular item, I'll declare this public hearing officially closed, and thank you very much for your time and input.
Thank you. Have a good night. We'll see you October 8th.
Okay. We'll move down onto our agenda, communications and announcements, and I would start with Mr. Costello.
Thank you. Amy had left a notation for us to let you know that the Monroe County Clerk's Office, along with County Legislators Debbie Draw and Dan Qualtrough, and Amy will be hosting Passport Night in Penfield on Tuesday, September 23rd from 5:30 to 7:30. The event will be within the Town Hall Auditorium at 3100 Atlantic Avenue. Passport Night has been extremely popular for individuals thinking about getting a passport or...
Does he have a microphone?
He does, and, okay.
Can you
thank
hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Okay.
All right. Passport Night has been extremely popular for individuals thinking about getting a passport or updating one that has expired. Signing up in advance is encouraged but not required. For more information, go to the Monroe County website at monroecounty.gov or contact Amy at 340-8629, and she will help you out any way she can.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. On Saturday, September 27th, the Penfield Parent and Kiwanis Club will host an electronics recycling event to benefit Golisano Children's Hospital. This event will be held from 9 a.m. to noon at the town's DPW complex. For more information on these events, please visit penfield.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Messler.
Another opportunity for a recycling event in the town of Penfield. The town will be hosting a one-day recycling event on Saturday, October 4th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Penfield residents may recycle at this time metals, destroy confidential documents, and dispose of residential brush at our Public Works Complex, 1607 Jackson Road. Clothing donations can also be made on-site at the St. Pauli Textile Shed near the sewer building, and that shed is there all the time for you to make clothing donations if you need to. Again, on Saturday, October 4th, another recycling event brought to you by the town of Penfield. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. A couple of brief items. Last week was National Assisted Living Week, and the theme, The Magic of Music. I had the opportunity and pleasure to be with Heathwood facility at 250 and Pembroke Drive to proclaim the week of September 7th through the 13th as National Assisted Living Week. Second item is that we're starting a new series that will begin this coming Monday. It is sponsored by our Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee. It'll be at 6:30 p.m. and it'll run for 6 weeks. The first one is going to be recycling and creatively reusing in Monroe County, and we have a representative from Monroe County here to present. We also have Deb Mirator from Greenovation to demonstrate ideas of creatively reusing materials. And so anyone that has an interest, the programs are free. We do ask that you please sign up through our Recreation Department, and again, that will run for the next 6 weeks. The last item I have, I've been notified by the county that Penfield was awarded $34,750 as part of the community block grant. This is for sidewalks on Empire Boulevard, and this work will start in spring of 2015. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The Family First 5K Challenge will be held on Sunday, September 28th, starting at 9 a.m. at the Penfield Recreation Center. To register, please go to penfieldrec.org and complete the form. All race details, maps, and information will be provided online. Also, Penfield's free Drive Electric Day will be held on Thursday, September 18th from 2 to 7 p.m. at the Penfield Town Hall here at 3100 Atlantic Avenue. The event is being coordinated by Bob Knauer, an electrical engineer and member of Penfield's Energy and Environmental Conservation or Advisory Committee. Event hosts are the town's Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee, Genesee Region Clean Communities, and the New York State Electric Auto Association. There will be over 26 electric vehicles at this event. Electric car owners who wish to participate may register at www.pluginday.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cole.
I have two announcements. The 4th annual bike drop will take place on October 4th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Penfield Community Center. Please bring any unwanted adult bikes, children's bikes, tricycles, toddler, plastic bikes, and bike parts, and it will be donated to our community bikes. And if you want more information, you can contact me, or you can contact the Recreation Department, and it's sponsored by Penfield Rotary and the town of Penfield. My other announcement is that my next community chat will be held on Tuesday, October 21st from 5:30 to 7 in the new book area, if you'd like to come over and talk about any concerns you might have. And Tony, Mr. Supervisor, may I read the proclamation that?
Actually, why don't we do this, because we don't have anyone here for that proclamation. Why don't we do it at the end, and we'll go into public participation?
Okay.
We'll do it at our second public participation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to public participation. We have two opportunities. This is the first. The second is after we go through our resolutions. 3 ways if you're here, and I know we've got 3 people signed up. You can call in at 340-8771, or you can log on at penfield.org. And Mr. Costello, if you would start, please.
Thank you. Tom Trevette?
I yield to Mr. Murphy.
Very good. Mr. Murphy?
Welcome, Tim.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, Town Board, Mr. Horwitz, Mr. Costello. I'm Tim Murphy, 48 Corral Drive. I'd like to read a brief statement, but it dovetails with something that's going to happen later with regards to a petition that was presented to the town. So I'm not sure if I'm out of order, but maybe I'll just say I'm announcing the petition then. So one of the things that Jeff, myself, and others during the campaign season last year learned was a very compelling story about an awful special woman that lives in our town. So again, I'd like to read my prepared statement. When I first heard the name Irene Gosson, I recognized it, but I did not know her story. And I'm not going to be able to do her whole life's account, do it justice. But what I want us to consider is sharing a report and recognition for one of the first female supervisors in New York State and the first in our town. She was, by all accounts, a reluctant politician, but rather first a loving wife, mother, and music teacher. But she learned her way quickly and was very effective. Irene was, and still is, passionate about controlling development and doing it the right way, balancing environmental impact and protecting our natural resources, wanting Penfield to always be the town of planned progress. This petition is the start of a process to tell her story so that we'll have more positive role models, especially women in government and leadership positions. Jeff Burns, Tom Trevette, myself, and others learned many things from Irene, including some narrative about you, Mr. Supervisor, which we'll save for another day.
Not a problem.
She's an amazing woman. At 94 years young, she still reads the D&C newspaper every single day from front to back and is keenly tuned in to the issues and local challenges and opportunities. In the petition packet that Tom Trevette prepared, there's a photo of a good friend, Tom Falk, in front of one of the many, many trees that she gave out as part of her campaign. She's a noted environmentalist and just a special person. What we would like to happen is to convene a small committee to come up with some ways to honor Irene and to deliver a short list of recommendations to the town board for your final input and approval. To start this process, we've included 12 ideas of recognition to start the conversation, and I have them with me, and I'll submit them to Mr. Costello. The goal is for others to know that one person can make a difference and to offer a positive role model for everyone to aspire to. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The original petition that Mr. Trevette gave me yesterday, he's holding out on me because he only gave me 11 of those 12. So I look forward to the 12th item. Tom? And I believe, Tom, there might be a microphone right. Thank you. And if you just tap that, Tom, just on the top? Okay, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, ladies and gentlemen of the town board, when I delivered the petition with the original signatures to the supervisor, he located a list of the supervisors in the past, which indicated their terms. And it appears that Irene Gosson served the town as supervisor from 72 to 79. Then there was a break of a couple of years. She appeared as supervisor again for 81 to 83, I think.
82, 83.
Thank you. And subsequently, she served the town as the representative in the county legislature. Irene's major issue that motivated her to jump into public life was her love of the environment and her alarm about the human behavior which was damaging our air, water, soil, and other elements of the environment. Her strategy was to improve the tools which the town and the county would have to protect the environmental atmosphere and which influences the lives of all of our residents. Her vision was to infuse the ordinances and regulations with the current science and thinking designed to limit the harm to the environment. You're familiar, I'm sure, with her strategy on the campaign trail when she toted around the pine tree seedlings as a symbol of her interest in the environment. Well, many of those seedlings around this town have grown into very large trees, and so have the environmental good works that Irene helped to set in motion, which has grown to become part of the town's character. By her vision and leadership, she both educated the residents of the town and county and framed legislation to protect the environment. She led Penfield to be the first town in the state to adopt a conservation board, and she led the town to be the first in the region to adopt an environmental protection ordinance. She led the formation and implementation of the Arundequoit Bay Master Plan, and she obtained federal funds to update the Penfield Master Plan. She lobbied against the construction of 4-lane highways that went through the town that would fragment traditional life in Penfield. She also increased citizen participation by creating citizen advisory boards, and she brought in federal community development funds for sidewalks and home improvement loans for senior citizens of limited means. By her leadership at statewide organizations, she raised the level of Penfield's reputation for progressive, intelligent planning. She played a role in the transfer of our Genie land to become what is now known as Channing Philbrook Park. She was leading the way to protect the 1,000-acre swamp, as well as the conversion of depleted quarries into spectacular golf courses, and was a catalyst for Penfield's commitment to the preservation of open space. Now, Penfield has a tradition of honoring some past supervisors for their significant contributions and achievements by naming an appropriate public facility in their name so that future town residents become familiar with such achievements. After delivering the original signatures to the supervisor, this evening I put on each of the desks of the councilmen and councilwomen a similar set of signatures and exhibits, including the pictures of one of the major big trees that grew from her seedlings, and a list of suggested public facilities that could be named in honor of Irene. A couple of them, of course, are right behind her home. She could look out the window and see them from her living room. They're suggestions, however, and if you find this idea interesting and appealing, which I hope you will, those suggestions can be considered by your committee, in whatever form you create it, for honoring Irene in this manner. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. And I'll make sure, I don't see one for the clerk, but I'll make sure that we get a copy for the clerk so that that's part of their record as well.
Yeah, I guess I anticipated that the original signatures would.
Yep, ultimately do that, we'll get, the originals will go to her and I'll get a copy. So thank you for that. And one of the comments that I made to Tom when he had come in was that did you have any thoughts or ideas? And obviously, one of the last pages, or the last 4 or 5 pages, talked about some naming possibilities. Rename the street, Parkview Lane to Irene Gosson Way, or Irene Gosson's Parkway, or Parkview, excuse me. Renaming the neighborhood White Village to Gosson's Grove, or something similar to that. So we appreciate the information that you submitted, and it's certainly always helpful to have some thoughts and ideas to go with that, kind of as a starting point. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tim.
Bob Reed?
Bob Reed, 275 Parkview Drive. Good evening. I want to second Tim and Tom's presentation. I can't think of anything more appropriate than to name some natural feature after Irene Gosson. And some of you might remember that on at least 3 occasions I've stood before you, and starting in 2008 and 2 more times ending in 2011, suggesting that what's now called Lucian Moran Park, then it was called the Ellison Wetlands, should be named in honor of Irene, because I think maybe her rise to prominence started with the sound of bulldozers and dump trucks near her home. Much of that land was owned by a gentleman who lived in the neighborhood, and he had a plan to turn it into a landfill, which he did with another piece of property near our neighborhood. And Irene organized the neighborhood, created the first Parkview Association, and played a major role in convincing the county to come up with the money to buy that land. And it's a magnificent park to walk through, and we're very fortunate to have it. I thought it was very sad when it became Lucian Moran Park. Not that Lucian Moran isn't a wonderful guy, and he did a great deal for the park system in Monroe County. But Irene played such a personal and powerful role in getting that park, that land into the park system, that it would have been appropriate to be named after her. And it's not too late for her name to appear alongside Lucian Moran's name. I don't know why it couldn't be Gosson Moran Park, or Moran Gosson Park. And I know you folks have a lot of influence, and I know a lot of people in the county legislature, and I'll bet you could make that happen if you had the will to. But one way or another, Irene certainly should be honored. I'm here primarily tonight to kind of follow up on where we might be in solving the odor problem from Baker Commodities rendering plant. I have copies of some letters, Tony, that you sent, I believe, to the Department of Health and to the DEC. And I wonder if you can tell us if you have any new information for us.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. I spoke with Paul D'Amato yesterday afternoon, or late yesterday morning. He called me to let me know that Baker, as well as his people, and the consultant who was taking a look at the scrubbers were actively working at the facility Monday and Tuesday. He anticipated that sometime over the next short period of time that they would have a report back to Baker and back to DEC, and he assured me that copies of that would come to the town as well. We talked about getting together. He is not opposed to doing that. He wants to have all of his materials together, including the report from the consultant to do that. So I'm hoping to get that scheduled with him sooner rather than later. The Health Department did reach out, John Ritchie, to indicate that the Health Department is also doing some investigation, and they would be getting back to us over the next several weeks. So that's the most current information that I have, both from DEC and from Monroe County Department of Health.
2 weeks ago when we were here, I think members of the board also expressed astonishment that the DEC had declared Baker to be fully in compliance with his permit without supplying any supporting data, any numbers, any emissions testing. And did you ask him about that? Can we get that data?
That is something as part of that information meeting that they will provide whatever materials they have. And like I say, that you know as much as I do, Bob, at this point.
Well, I wonder if you'd make a special effort, since they've made that determination. They must have facts and figures to back it up.
I would anticipate that they do, yes.
And would you consider contacting him and asking him
I'd be
to
more
get
than-
us that information
be more than
before
happy
that
to.
meeting so we can digest it and look at it and think
Be
about
more
it?
than happy to ask them for whatever materials they have to be able to share that with us.
Okay. And the people who were looking at the scrubbers, was that SCP Control?
That's
Baker's
what
subcontractor?
that's what I understand.
Okay. We do have some concerns about them because they've been a Baker contractor for many years. That they've worked on that plant at least twice before. And we were hoping and asking for a more independent, a new set of eyes, and someone who is not a habitual Baker contractor. But at this point, we're just watching and waiting and hoping and looking for results. As Mr. Horowitz said to me once several years ago, the proof is in the pudding. And we're hoping that there will be some improvements that we can rejoice about.
As we as well. I mean, you received a copy of my letter. I know that you referred to it in your email, that you'd indicated that the town was gracious to let the SCP to come in. We actually sent a letter encouraging DEC not to use them. So I just want to make sure that the record is totally straight, because it was somewhat, to me, misleading in your email out to the group that we, in fact, granted them the opportunity to use SPC or SCP. And so I just want to make sure that, we're on record of saying that we would like to have someone else. And that DEC believes that they're competent and qualified. And as you said, certainly the proof is in the pudding. And I want to make sure that that is on the record as well, that we did, in fact, let Paul D'Amato know that that was not our first choice.
Okay. Now, I never was believed that you had anything to do with the selection of SCP. You handed the issue to the DEC, and the DEC allowed Baker to pick its own contractor. That's my understanding.
That's right.
Right.
That
Okay.
wasn't quite how it came across in your email.
I'll have to take
So I
another
just
look
want to
at
make
that.
sure that
Yeah.
that is, I mean,
Yeah.
I know we're both trying to work on this, but I also want to make sure that everybody's got the same set of accurate facts, too.
Absolutely.
No mistake about it, Bob. I concur with Tony in terms of, and supported him drafting that letter, that very strong letter, indicating our concerns and displeasure. My take on it is that if Baker Commodities is going to proceed with that evaluator, they do so at their own peril, and that the story may not end with the report from that subcontractor.
This sounds very good, and we'll be watching. One of our neighbors, Lydia Palmer, wrote you an email maybe a week or so ago about the possible role of a local university in testing doing environmental testing, especially Baker emissions and air, water, and ground contamination issues. I thought it was very compelling, and we do need to go ahead and look at that. But I didn't see a reply from you to Lydia.
I have not. I saw it. I got it earlier this week. Bob was the first that I've had a chance to see it, but I have not had a
Okay.
chance to reply to it.
Okay, well, I hope you will think that over, because I think there's some great possibilities with the local expertise that we have that might save a considerable amount of money and give us some really great results. But we would like to know what's coming into our neighborhood. We are aware that there could be over 110 chemicals in rendering plant emissions, untreated emissions, and only a small, maybe less than a quarter of them actually produce foul odors. So even though we're not smelling it, we may be breathing it, and we would like to know what we're breathing.
And I think as we said at the last couple meetings, and it's bear repeating again, that's the reason why we asked Dr. Byron Kennedy to get involved and to work with his team and work with the State Health Department if they felt that they didn't have the resources or expertise, to be able to deal with that.
Good. Excellent.
And I will add that, as you have observed, Councilman Quinn actually has been quite vocal with respect to the permit and the length of the permit, not only in the very quick evaluation we got back, but also the fact that we're dealing with a permit that is not relatively new. It's an old permit. Certainly, we believe that science has probably progressed within the time that the permit was handed down, and I commend Councilman Quinn for his quite vocal and quite adamant response to that.
Okay, thank you. Aside from specific emissions testing that should have gone on to validate that permit, there is the paragraph that says that notwithstanding the existence of specific air quality standards or emission limits, no person shall cause or allow emissions of such character or duration which are injurious to human, plant, or animal life or property, or which unreasonably interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life and property. It seems to be kind of a catch-all paragraph, but I really am quite curious to see how they square that paragraph with giving Baker a green light on their permit, but thank you. I wanted to also bring to your attention an article from the magazine of the rendering industry. I assume you're all subscribing to it now to keep up with the
I was
current
just talking about
developments.
this today, the most recent issue with the odor control article on it.
Well, this one is actually from June of 2005.
Oh, okay.
This is a picture of one of our little furry friends there. You can
There's a
probably
more
make them
recent
out. And it says, odor problem solved. And it's about the plant in Guelph, Ontario, the Rothsay plant in Guelph, Ontario, that somewhat like Baker Commodities was once out in the middle of nowhere, and then it ceased to be in the middle of nowhere as development came to it. And they worked primarily with scrubbers, and the scrubbers were not delivering the quality of air that the residents wanted. And they did a fairly detailed assessment of the situation. They looked at thermal oxidizers, which was and I guess is the big gun that Baker Commodities used, essentially an incinerator. And they found that over time it would probably be too expensive and was fossil fuel dependent. So they started to look for an alternative technology, and biofiltration has been around for maybe 20 years. It's been getting better and better. And they selected the plant called BioRem, and BioRem tested their scrubbers, I guess, the scrubber system, and found that they were removing less than 90% of the foul odors and leaving quite a bit in. And they did some pilots with the BioRem's technology, and they were getting in the mid-90s, I guess, of odor removal. And they had a lot of happy people in the surrounding community when they installed that system.
So they flip-flopped their data, essentially.
Yes,
They went from 10% efficient, if you will, to 90% efficient.
I might not have made that clear. I guess they were getting in the high 80% range of effectiveness with just the scrubbers.
Got it,
But
got it.
with the biofiltration, they went up to
To
in the mid-90s.
90 plus.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it wasn't quite a flip-flop.
Got it,
But
all
quite
right.
a significant improvement. And I don't think that they used thermal oxidizers at all. But it's not an inexpensive technology. But apparently, it has a once they put these units in, the units themselves have a 10-year lifespan, so that they get and they don't use, particularly except for venting and fans, they don't use fossil fuels, huge amounts of natural gas or huge amounts of electricity. So I want to leave this article with you. They also, because they obviously had those numbers, they have ways of testing the emissions, and I think that's where really things ought to be starting at Baker Commodities, is the testing of the emissions when they're doing a full production cycle, so that they know how effective they are, how much is actually escaping into the air. I got a letter from Senator Ted O'Brien, and he wanted to offer his help, and we're grateful to have whatever help he can offer us. And he referred to information he got from the DEC, and apparently the DEC described the problem to him as fugitive emissions that were a problem. And, for me, that conjures up, Jean Valjean and Inspector Javert running over the landscape, a fugitive, or if they're fugitive emissions, there's been a prison break, and it's not one fugitive, but hundreds of fugitives. It's a major, major problem, and it's gotten much worse this summer. So we are hoping that perhaps a new technology will help us out there. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask
So is that,
about-
we've gone through and we've put, information that we've received, letters that we've sent out or letters that we've gotten in. I'd love to post the Senator O'Brien letter as well, especially if he's gotten something from DEC. Because I don't recall getting anything from DEC that talks about, fugitive odors or anything like that. So I would have expected.
I'll send you a copy of his letter.
Great. I would have hoped or expected that DEC would have copied us in on that.
Right.
Or Senator O'Brien's office. Because I
Right.
know that we have copied in his office on all of our outgoing correspondence, so professional courtesy.
I
Thank
thought that a lot of the neighbors had gotten this letter. I don't think it was just to me. I think it was something that maybe many of the neighbors had received. I'll be glad to send you a copy.
That would be great. Thank you.
Let's see. I asked you last time about legislating fines and penalties for Baker Commodities for egregious emissions. It's one of the 7 items in our petition. I'm not going to go through all those items tonight. I think it's absolutely essential. In the past, this is a problem with a big historical footprint, and in the past, nothing gets done until there's a neighbor uprising of sorts. And maybe our petition is that's what that is. But there are no consequences for Baker that I'm aware of, except that they have to fix the problem for a while. There need to be some consequences when they stockpile materials that they're not capable of processing quickly and they can't keep in an odor-controlled area. There need to be financial consequences for them when they don't do preventative maintenance and they have massive breakdowns that cause major problems for our neighborhood. If there aren't some consequences, I don't think they have any positive incentive to stay ahead of the game when all they're going to get is a request to fix it and move forward. This seems to me to be essential. And I know 2 weeks ago you had talked about it among yourselves. I think you need to talk about it. And if it's not a direction you feel comfortable moving in, then we'd like you to explain that to us because it seems to be quite essential. I also think, in closing, that since it's budget time, this would be a very good time for the board to set aside a substantial sum of money that doesn't have to be spent, but that is available to be spent on another evaluation of the plant or to pay for testing of air, soil, and water. 2 weeks ago, we sat through the budget presentation, and a number of people mentioned that. Put some money aside, give it a line item. If it doesn't get spent, if things turn out and it's not needed, that's a fine thing. If it is needed, then you don't have to go into the emergency budget or the reserve budget, but we would appreciate that. Thank you.
I would be expecting that if we needed to do that, Bob, that DEC would be looking to hire an expert and having Baker pay for it. And that is what is the common thing to be done. I saw that at Kodak when, over the years, when DEC was in for different odor emissions, is that ultimately DEC would recommend or hire a particular consultant, and whether the bill was $5 or $50,000, Kodak would write that check. And I would anticipate that if, in fact, this expert that came in, and if he comes back and says everything's hunky-dory, as I said in my letter to Paul D'Amato, and as I said to him yesterday, I'd be looking for DEC to then be hiring someone and passing that cost off to Baker.
Okay.
Because I'm sorry, Rob, because that to me should not be borne by the taxpayers of Penfield.
Okay. Somebody's got to pay for it. And,
Yep, absolutely. Somebody's got to pay. Somebody's got to pay for it. But I don't see that the taxpayers of Penfield should shoulder that expense.
Okay. And that sounds good to me, because this plant really services a huge part of New York State, as we understand it, all of western and central New York, probably not as far as Albany. So I agree with you. Maybe Penfield shouldn't have to shoulder that, and maybe the state of New York, through the DEC, should.
And I'm not saying that they should. I'm saying that DEC
goes to
should.
Baker. Yes, right.
DEC should identify that next consultant if they need it, and the bill comes in, and the bill gets paid by Baker.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
And that's done in litigation too, where their only involvement is paying the bill. I mean, they're not involved in the selection. I would certainly oppose DEC asking them a second time who they would like to have do that. And I have not read back to 2005 Render magazine, so I commend you. You've gone back farther than I have. But the most recent one that's online, I think maybe it's a quarterly magazine, I'm not sure. I think it was maybe from July. One of the cover articles is odor control. And that's what actually caught my eye as I was flipping through. And interestingly enough, 2005, 2006, in those 2 years, there were some significant legislative changes on the federal level from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which changed the rendering industry significantly. And I've been reading up on that with respect to pet food, ingredients in pet food. As we know, rendering produces ingredients for pet food. So it's interesting that you mentioned that that's when that came out, and now I think there have been some additional changes so that this most recent issue you might be interested in taking a look at.
I'll see if Wegmans has a copy of it. I have everything else. Jim, would you see that board members get a copy of that? Or?
And just briefly, one of the things that Mr. Supervisor mentioned earlier was the onus that's placed on Penfield taxpayers. And one of the things that also should not be placed on the Penfield taxpayers is the financial burden that would come with the town creating an enforcement arm to determine what fines and fees should be levied against Baker. Part of having the 40-plus page permit that is maybe 15, 16 years old at this point is it's in effect by the Department of Environmental Conservation. It's their job to follow up with what is or what is not a finable offense based on that permit. Now, I think we both agree that DEC's quick determination of compliance that we received earlier this summer is probably lacking in many details from top to bottom. But I will say that for whatever reason, DEC has not determined up to this point that Baker is operating outside of that permit. And I would say that that is their role and responsibility, no different than the Department of Health's, whether county or state, in looking at the emission standards or what's being released. So I think that there's more information that we do need. I think we all agree on that. But I would just say that as far as the burden that would be placed on the town to have the expertise or the skills involved to determine what is a fine or should be fined, I don't think that the town should place that burden on the taxpayers either.
And I will offer one step further on that, Bob, with respect to levying of fines, although in concept, or I understand the concept of levying fines, it's important for people to understand, though, what that entails from a procedural or practical standpoint. Where would Baker Commodity go? How would they be summoned? They would go to Penfield Town Court for a civil fine. They'd be entitled to bring their attorneys. We'd have to have an attorney prosecuting in Penfield Town Court for a fine, and the resources of town court to impose a fine, and I believe there probably are limits to that as far as jurisdictionally for Penfield Town Court with respect to the amount of fine that can be imposed. So it's important that there's no due process provision by which the town board can summarily fine someone without any bringing them into the jurisdiction of Penfield Town Court. So the fact that, first of all, we don't even have a code, or we'd have to go through the process to enact that regulation, enact the penalties, go through the public hearing process, and then it basically would be, they would be subject to the same jurisdictional, procedural, and substantive review as someone who's committing a code violation, for instance, on a sign or a shed. That's essentially what we'd be left with.
Somebody's got to do it. And the DEC historically is simply not there. You know, as Mr. Marriott told me years ago, he spends 2 hours a year down there walking through the plant when it's not operating and then looking at records. 2 hours, one morning a year. And he said, Bob, I'm not going to be there when they make the odors. Somebody has to do this job. It seems to me that the town benefits greatly from having the plant here. I don't know what they pay in taxes annually.
School district benefits.
But also the town?
Very small amount, yeah. Yeah, yes.
Really?
I mean, I mean.
A very small amount.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at it, 8 cents of every dollar that comes in on your taxes goes to the town, and 22 cents of that goes to the county. And then do the math, 70% goes to the school district. So that's, you know, we collect, this time of the year, we collect school taxes, and 100% of that obviously is turned over to the school districts, both Penfield and Webster. But who makes out are the school districts.
So what number of pennies in the dollar comes to the town?
8 cents of every dollar. I would encourage you, before you leave, if you'd go right out into the rotunda, there's a pie chart there, and we've got that broken down on a home that is $160,000, what they pay for in taxes, and so you can scale that up, but to take a look at what percent, but 8 cents of every dollar of taxes paid comes to the town of Penfield. All the rest goes to the county and to the school district.
Interesting.
I would have Bob, I mean,
You would have thought I would have known that, right?
You're catching me totally by surprise, because I would have bet anything that you knew that. And I'm being very serious. I would have expected that you would have had that piece of information.
Most people.
Sorry to disappoint you tonight.
In your defense, most people don't realize that they could right now take out their checkbook and write their town tax without any problem. It's the rest of it that
Right.
we have to do some education on.
Right.
So, in your defense.
Well, this has to be done. There need to be penalties. There needs to be some kind of more rapid response when there are problems. It shouldn't take the neighbors 9 years. It shouldn't take 180 complaints in a year before people really begin to notice. And maybe one of the things that we have to do, what the town has to do, and we have to do as neighbors, is try to convince the DEC that there needs to be a closer tabs on the plant. Two state assembly people from downstate, I believe they're from Queens, created a bill, it hasn't been passed, I don't even know if it's even gotten to the floor, but would require the rendering facility in Queens, which is not actually a processing facility, it's a transfer facility that sends stuff over to Newark, that requires supervision, outside supervision, whenever that facility is in operation. Essentially, I call it the nanny principle. They need to have people watching them. And I'm not sure that somebody's got to be there every night, but there has to be the threat of someone dropping in at 2 a.m., an engineer dropping in, at least the reasonable threat of someone who understands rendering, dropping in at 3 a.m. when they're doing their nighttime production cycle and looking at the equipment and seeing if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think that's an important thing, and I don't think they've been subject to close enough supervision over the years, and that's why these problems come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Costello, is anyone else not signed up, but I see his hand in the air. I would ask our friend Ed Lindskog. Good to see you, Ed.
Nice to be on 2 feet.
Yeah, it's good to see you on 2 feet, Ed.
What I'm written made out of stainless steel. Ed Lindskog, 18 High School Drive. I lived on Landing Road for a time, and Baker's Commodities stunk then back in the 60s. That's why I moved to Penfield.
They're in Penfield too, Ed.
Pardon?
I said they're in Penfield too.
Yeah, but
Baker.
Landing Road's in Brighton. I lived in Brighton, and we used to get the proper wind from the northeast. You get odors in Brighton. People just didn't complain, or they didn't know who to complain to.
Got it.
But that's not my problem. My problem is High School Drive. The school district updated High School Drive. They redid the speed bumps, and guess what? The speed went up. They put in smaller speed bumps. Most school districts have speed bumps of various sizes. We now have probably 25 to 35 miles per hour on High School Drive, where we used to have 20 to 25 miles per hour. It would be helpful, Mr. Supervisor, if you could just, in your column, alert residents and visitors to the school, because the school district tells me it's not our people, it's all the visitors that come there that speed up and down your road. It's not a real problem for me, but there are now 3 small children under the age of 5 living on the road, and as we know, sometimes children wander places they're not supposed to. They're great parents watching them, but with a little help from the town, I know you have conversations with the school district regularly.
I do.
And I think they're trying to control it.
Or I did when Steve Grimm was there, and so I have not had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with this new superintendent, Superintendent Putnam.
I know him very well, and he's been very cooperative.
But he's been very cooperative, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he's working on a million other things right now.
I'm sure he is.
So,
Yeah.
but I did correspond with his office a week or 10 days ago to try to get some time with him and to pick up where I left off with Steve Grimm.
Okay. The district talked to my neighbors, and they added another spur sidewalk to accommodate people from that driveway crossing the road with baby carriages and whatever. So, I mean, the road is great, but we're just driving too fast on it. The other
I
issue.
had the conversation recently with Captain Bob Clare, who is issuing tickets at one of the highest rates that they ever have, and you know, it
441?
and it just continues to grow. 440,
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah.
All
5 Mile
over.
Line.
5 Mile Line and 441.
Right.
Empire Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue. And for every one that they issue, it seems like there's 2 or 3 more wanting to go that much faster, quicker.
Right. And I got another grandson that just started driving, so I hope he doesn't get picked up. 2014 5 Mile Line Road, which is the subdivision, there was in the proposal some additional work to be done on High School Drive and 5 Mile Line Road. Is that still on the schedule? And is that what's the plan for for getting that accomplished?
I would have to talk to Mr. Benway, the town engineer, but I know he's been talking to Mr. Neufeld about getting that resolved.
And how much pipe is being replaced?
I can't tell you off the top of my
Okay.
head.
Okay.
There is a plan that identifies it, and you're more than welcome to have a copy of that.
And wasn't there some issue also with the county sewer in the area?
Yes, but I think we've worked that out with the county.
You did work that out with the county, okay. The other issue is somehow the street sign ended up missing. So, and I was reminded of some of my visitors that came to see me when I was laid up, Ed, there's no street sign there. I said, oh, I didn't know, on High School Drive.
Oh, on High School Drive. Okay.
Yeah. I said, I don't know where it went, it used to be there.
Probably in some
So it's
kid's
gotta be the
bedroom.
double-
I was going
It's
to
gotta
say,
be
it's
the
probably a
double-
senior prank.
It's got to be the double sign, 5 Mile. And
5 Mile Line and High School Drive, yeah, yeah. There used to be a post down there by the traffic signal.
I'll
but-
make sure that we get to the county with that, to get that taken care of.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you see the sign on a homecoming float, let us know. Might be coming.
No, I didn't think they took it. I think when they just worked on the street and the gutters and all.
Took it and didn't bring it back.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That we need to get taken care of. I get more concerned when you have non-Penfield agencies responding to emergencies. So if you've got a mutual aid because they're tied up on something else, they may not necessarily know, like we know, 5 Mile Line Road, High School Drive type of thing, so, okay.
It's identified Penfield High School, but that's all it does.
Right, yeah, okay, good. All right, we're still on public participation. Any additional public participation at this time? Seeing none, we'll continue to move on. On our agenda, we have additions and deletions. Any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we have approval of the August 20th, 2014 minutes before us. Would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
I'd like to move the August 20th.
Second.
Minutes be approved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes?
No.
Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
Thank you. Petitions, with the exception of the petition that came in this evening, has the board clerk's office or town attorney received any additional petitions since our last time? Seeing none, we'll move on to resolution by function. Law and Finance.
Yes, Resolution 14T-163, 2014 Handbook Revisions.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the Penfield Town Board adopted an employee handbook on January 3rd, 1989, and the board is committed to keeping this information up to date. Now therefore be it resolved that the following revisions and additions be on file with the town clerk are approved for inclusion in the employee handbook effective October 1st, 2014. For the record, Mr. Supervisor, just like to list a couple of them. One being hours of employment, attendance and absences, sick leave, bereavement policy, vacation policy, promotional steps, employment policies and practice, hours of employment, attendance and absences, just to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, and again, these revisions, in many cases, were minor revisions, some clarification. They're items that were in the handbook anyways, but just some clarification. Okay, I would ask, see no further discussion, ask for a roll call vote.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is Resolution 14T-164, 2014 Budget Amendment, Consolidated Highway Improvement Program.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas New York State has increased its Consolidated Highway Improvement Program, known as CHIPS, from $205,000 to $231,000 during 2014. Whereas the Highway Department is required to fund additional road improvements during 2014. Whereas the Highway Department expenditures are to be funded from the CHIPS program. Now be it resolved that the following budget amendments are approved as follows. Under Highway Fund Revenues, CHIPS State Aid, increased amount of $26,000, revised amount of $231,000. Under Highway Funds Appropriation, CHIPS Capital Project, increased amount $26,000, revised amount $231,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Certainly must be an election year. We get additional funds from the state of New York. That's always a pleasant surprise. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
All right. Resolution 14T165, 2014 budget amendment, SALT budget.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas during 2014, there was a severe winter, and during 2014, there is a need for additional salt. And whereas the town board desires to have an accurate estimate of expenditures and revenues for the year 2014. Now therefore be it resolved that the following budget amendment be approved as follows. Highway fund revenues, description of appropriated surplus, increased amount 151,000, revised amount 151,000. Highway fund appropriations salt account 151,000 increase, revised amount of 466,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
Move on to Community Services, Resolution 14T-166, please.
Yes, 14T-166, authorization for supervisor to sign recreation contracts.
So moved.
Second.
This resolution authorizes the town supervisor to sign 17 recreation contracts, and they're all dealing with the different programs that are taking place this fall through the Recreation Department.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
Brings us to old business. Any old business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none. Any new business to come before the board this evening? Again, seeing none. It's our second public participation. No one with us in the audience, so I would say that there is no further public participation. That being the case,
Shall I read the?
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I apologize, Councilwoman Cole. We do have one order of business,
Yes.
and this is a proclamation
It's a
that.
proclamation. I received a letter from the Daughters of the American Revolution, and they asked us to put together a proclamation for the Constitution Week that's taking place right now. And I forwarded that request to the town supervisor, and a proclamation was created, and we were hopeful that someone from the DAR was going to be here tonight. Not sure why they didn't come, but I shall read it into the record. Constitution Week, September 17th through September 23rd, 2014. Whereas September 17th, 2014 marks the 227th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and memorable anniversary, and its patriotic celebrations which will commemorate this occasion, whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issues of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution, what they had in 1787, by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardian of this liberty, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Now therefore, I, R. Anthony LaFountain, by virtue of the authority vested in me as supervisor of the town of Penfield, do hereby proclaim September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and that's signed by the town supervisor, Anthony LaFountain, on September 17th. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll make sure that that gets appropriately sent. If we could take that, we'll get it to them so they have it for their permanent record.
Yes.
And thank you for that, Linda. Thank you for bringing that to us for this very important recognition. Seeing no further business to come before this board this evening, I would declare this meeting officially adjourned. And I would again ask that we all keep in our thoughts and prayers Kay Shaw for the loss of her husband, George. Amy Steckloff, our clerk, for the loss of her grandmother. This meeting is officially adjourned, 9:23 p.m. Thank you, Penfield TV.